Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. I am here with my co-host JC. Hey JC.
It's a pleasure to be back. Thanks, Wendy.
We have an awesome guest here today to talk about DEI from both a marketing and an HR perspective. So I'm super excited about this as a business owner. And this, I would like to welcome Michelle Ngome. Did I pronounce that right?
Ngome.
Ngome. See that? We screwed that whole thing up. Oh no, that was me that screwed it up.
That was
I'm going to take
that
accountability. I am horrible at pronouncing names, which is why when I got married and then divorced, I kept that name because my maiden name was so long no one could have pronounced it. With that said, what we do want to talk about is, we want to hear from you. You're the expert in the DEI space. I love that that you do it more in marketing. And then, of course, I dabble in it. I'm not an expert in DEI. I know enough to say, hey, we need to call somebody else. But I know enough in the HR space to say it's really darn important. It's so important. So we want to jump into like the rise and fall of DEI initiatives and why are so many of these initiatives in businesses failing? Any idea on that?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. The first thing is the reason why I started this work is because I felt like so much emphasis goes into DEI from an HR standpoint, but it's important that those recruiting and retention efforts are spread out. And as a marketer, I'm like, how are these marketing campaigns are not diverse and inclusive? Who's on the marketing team? Let's be intentional on how we hire and recruit marketing staff, right? So from my perspective, I feel like the DEI push is kind of falling by the wayside for a couple of different reasons. One, it is the economy, right? Overall, the impact of social justice in 2020 has kind of minimized. I think at that time we were able to recognize it because we were all sitting at home in front of the TV. We weren't as busy as we were pre-COVID and as we're getting back to. So I think there's just been a major push of getting back to normal, where we're really in a new normal and priorities have shifted along the way. And then, of course, the economy is behind that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for our listeners, just so they know a little bit about you, you're an award-winning inclusive marketing consultant who helps organizations with strategic diversity initiatives. And we'll talk a little bit more later on about your card game, which I think a lot of our listeners in the HR space and the marketing space too are going to be interested in. But tell us a little bit about, what you do with your clients at Line 25 Consulting.
Yeah, so I help organizations look at diversity marketing from a holistic approach, right? So it's more than just creating this diverse campaign. It's more than hiring Black and Brown talent, right? It's recruitment marketing. How are you getting people in the door or attracting people to work for you? How are you keeping them engaged through your company culture? Of course, I'll say there's the consumer or B2B marketing, which there's so much emphasis on that. We're doing that already. And then it's the community engagement, right? And I think a lot of small businesses struggle with that because they're like, well, I don't have the Chase budget or the Nike budget. Yeah, but you can create a $500 or $1,000 scholarship that can very much positively impact a high school or college student. Right. You can donate a couple of hours at the food bank, Habitat for Humanity. DEI is not all about, race or the low hanging fruit, but there's so many aspects that we can tap into when we really discover what are we interested in. And I think the foundation of all of that is our content and our communication. So everything that we're doing, content is everywhere. If you didn't take a picture, it didn't happen.
That's so true.
Right? If you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So I think there's all of those elements can go into the marketing efforts of a company.
I love that. Hey, JC, hit us with some stats on DEI and how it's changed recently.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few small blurbs here. Businesses attempted to demonstrate their commitment to diversity and inclusion by applying lessons learned from the Black Lives Matter movement. One business, many businesses actually, did this by making promises like some of these that are listed, making the hiring process more fair. They have an attempt to do that, choosing vendors who can actually meet diversity and inclusion standards. Companies sought to illustrate their commitment through financial promises with approximately $50 billion in total pledged to the cause. The firm Creative Investment Research says that even though U.S. companies promised to spend $50 billion on racial equity, only $250 million has been spent on that specific project so far.
I think they're missing the budget a little bit there.
Listen, this is a tough question, right? That's a tough stat. I'm kind of curious, I guess, what is the duration? Because, 50 bill, that's a lot of money. 250 million is a lot of money too. So I think we got to be mindful of the time frame, but 250 million, we'll say in 3 years, 2.5 years is really not bad. But yeah, it's a very, very minute fraction of the 50 billion.
And that time frame for you, that's from approximately 2020 until today.
Can you spend, if you had a multi-million-dollar company, you and your friends, can you spend $50 billion?
In
Heck
3
yeah,
years.
I can.
Right.
Yeah,
3 years.
yeah,
You got 3 years to spend it.
Yeah, so that's a little disheartening there that there's these initiatives going on. I want to go back to something that you said, Michelle, because I literally just posted a YouTube video of just a little verbiage about diversity and equity and inclusion. Had nothing to do with today's podcast. I don't know, maybe it did when I was preparing this agenda, right? But I said, okay, I always get this question of where do I start? And I say train. And that means train everybody. So I say train, recruit, hire, include, repeat. So train everybody who's involved in the recruiting process of everyone. So whether it's marketing people, HR people, whoever, the hiring managers, the person who's going to press submit on the Indeed ad, train them what diversity and inclusion means. And then start the recruiting. So if you didn't train them, stop the recruiting, right?
Yeah. Oh, and that's the thing. Sometimes we have to take a step back and slow down and critique ourselves, audit ourselves internally before we move forward.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, there is a little bit of good news about DEI in the workplace, and we're going to talk about that next in episode 2. So thanks for listening to episode 1 of our 5-part series on DEI from both a marketing and HR perspective. If you're listening on the HR Lady podcast, make sure you head over to Aurora Training Advantage and listen to the HR Empowerment podcast to hear the remaining 4 sessions. And over there, you can get HRCI and SHRM credits. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.